excited to welcome our special guests tonight, a couple of mad comic geniuses, Robert Townsend and Keenen Ivory Wayans. I'll introduce you to them a little bit more in depth after the movie, but Robert will be joining our faculty in the fall. Quite extraordinary. I'm already plotting a screening of the 5 Heartbeats. So let's take a look at Hollywood Shuffle. I just want to thank the USC Comedy and the School of Cinematic Arts program. They are putting this whole show on tonight. I also want to thank the SCA Council on Diversity and Inclusion for helping us to get the word out. Robert Townsend, Chicago native, often referred to as one of the godfathers of the independent film world. With over 30 years in the entertainment industry, Robert is a rare multi-hyphenate that does it all and has worked with talent from Halle Berry to Denzel Washington to Eddie Murphy to Beyonce. His films, including Eddie Murphy Raw, Hollywood Shuffle, The 5 Heartbeats, The Meteor Man, and Babs, quickly catapulted him into international prominence. His personal journey is the ultimate story of an underdog succeeding against the odds, raised by a single mother of 4 in the gang and drug-infested west side of Chicago. Townsend learned to survive the streets by using his wits and talents, but also with the help of courageous people from the community that invested in him. Robert also wrote, directed, produced, and acted on TV shows such as Townsend Television and The Parenthood. More recently, Robert directed Holiday Heart, Blacklisted, Phantom Punch, In the Hive, and Playing for Love, as well as the documentary Why We Laugh, Black Comedians on Black Comedy. Keenen Ivory Wayans is the trailblazing linchpin of a sprawling African-American family of comic entertainers. After hooking up with Eddie Murphy and earning a writing credit on Eddie Murphy Raw, Keenen partnered with Robert Townsend on Hollywood Shuffle, then made his directorial debut with the hit 70s blaxploitation parody, I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. Keenen achieved national prominence by successfully creating, launching, and hosting In Living Color, the landmark 90s black-oriented comedy on Fox that ignited the careers of not only his younger siblings, Damon, Kim, Sean, and Marlon, but also those of Jennifer Lopez, Jim Carrey, and Jamie Foxx. The Emmy-winning series was Keenen's creative baby and ultimate pièce de résistance. In '97, he produced the Keenen Ivory Wayans Show, a party-themed talk show in which he served as the cool, urban-styled host. Keenen also wrote, directed, and starred in A Lowdown During Shame, and teamed with his brothers Sean and Marlon for Scary Movie in 2000. Still one of the most successful feature films ever directed by an African-American, plus the sequel, Scary Movie 2, White Chicks, and Little Man. And the moderator tonight is Barnett Kellman, professor of cinematic arts here, who made his feature debut with the 20th Century Fox film Key Exchange, starring Brooke Adams. He went on to direct Dolly Parton and James Woods in Straight Talk for Disney. He is perhaps best known as one of the preeminent directors of television pilots. He won 2 Emmy Awards and a Directors Guild Award for his work on Murphy Brown. In addition to the pilot, he directed the first 75 episodes of Murphy, as well as the series finale. His other pilots include Mad About You, the long-running series Suddenly Susan, the George Lopez Show, My Boys on TBS, and he created the Gene Wilder series, Something Wilder. In all, he's received 7 Emmy nominations and 3 DGA nominations for his work on the small screen. In addition to teaching at USC, he's been on the faculties of AFI, Columbia, and NYU. And last year, he staged the world premiere of Israel Horowitz's play Out of the Mouth of Babes, starring Estelle Parsons and Judith Ivey. So let's welcome up Robert Townsend, Keenen Ivory Wayans, and Barnett Kellman.
Nights like this.
Stop.
Wow, thank you. Well, listen, this is exciting. I am honored, truly, to be sitting here with 2 brilliant and hilarious men. I've admired their work for years. They are true pioneers and godfathers of independent film. It's hard to overstate that. It's hard to overstate the seismic shift that took place in audiences and in the industry when this film was released, all off of the back of these two guys, all off of the energies of Robert, and of course, just a few years later, another seismic shift in television with In Living Color and Keenen, Ivory, Wayans emergence, and the Wayans family emergence. So this is a great, great, great honor and pleasure for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Maslin of the New York Times called the Hollywood Shuffle exuberant satire, and she described it as reality-minded humor, which some of my students will know that's dear to me, and I think both of them are really apt descriptions. This film was honored at the Deauville Film Festival, at the Independent Spirit Awards, and it's Rotten Tomato gives it an 88% on the tomato meter. So that's an incredibly enduring tribute. It was made for $100,000.
$100,000, yes.
And it earned something like $5 million in release. Is that right, or is it still earning more?
It's still earning. It's still earning.
Oh boy.
Yeah, actually it was less than, once they came in and gave money for post, but
It was less than that, yeah.
the initial cost was somewhere around 50, 60.
I want to hear a little more about that later on. I'm sure a lot of our students want to hear about that. Hear how you guys did that. It made over $5 million in its release and made stars out of its creators, Robert Townsend and Keenen Ivory Wayans. Now, first of all, let's start off with this. I'm wondering. These are all things I'm wondering, and then we'll give you guys a chance to ask what you're wondering. But I am wondering, where did you two guys meet?
He was coming out of no. Portals are done. Here's the thing. I'll start. We met as comedians at the Improv in New York City. We were online together at the Improv, and Keenen was still in college. He was still going to Tuskegee.
Right.
And so we, it's so funny because we were young comedians starting out. We didn't have money to get on the subway, so we would walk from one comedy club to another comedy club. We would walk through Central Park talking about our dreams and what we wanted to do, but it started at the Improv.
Yeah, it was the Improv at that time. There was maybe one black comic working in the
Maurice.
club. Yeah, working in the club circuit. And so when we were standing in line, it was like you look and you see just a little fur. You go, oh, there's a brother. Hey, what's up? You know, we kind of just bonded on that fact alone, and then. As we started to pursue stand-up, you kind of build your crew, you know, and Eddie Murphy became a part of that, and Arsenio Hall, and Charles Barnett.
Right.
Remember Charles Barnett?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but that's where it all began.
Okay, and so where did the idea for this film start?
You know what? It kind of came from our bad audition. It evolved because at first, Keenen moved to LA first. And then he said, Rob, you gotta come out here, we can take this. We can take this over. And so then I was in New York.
Look that easy, huh?
Yeah, he was like, cause he's got that New York mentality, so he was like, dude, they ain't doing nothing out here, Rob.
Okay, you know what it's like? It's like when you live in New York and you never go to the Empire State Building, right? Everybody else sees the Empire State Building as this marvel, but you live there, you see it every day, so you don't pay it any mind. And I kind of saw Hollywood the same way, that there was all this stuff here, but nobody was paying it any mind. You know, it was like everybody just kind of took it for granted. So that's why my mentality was, well, you know, if we did this or we did that, we could, you know, come up.
So Keenen calls me, he says, Rob, forget New York, come to LA, we could take this over. So he goes, I believe we can do this. I'll fly back, we'll get a truck, and we can drive your furniture across country. And that's what he does. But the only thing he didn't tell me was that he was gonna make these stops to see these honeys. So then, it's like, it's a straight route on the map, it's this way. And he goes, no, we gotta go to DC first. You know, and so, and then, no. And then he goes, because he had the best family memories of staying at Days Inn. And so he goes, Rob, when we get to the South, we gotta stay at Days Inn, man. We gotta stay at Days Inn. And so we finally, Keenen, here's Days Inn coming up. And we go there and it was like, nigger, go home. And we're like, oh, man. And then Keenen was so the whole trip, he was like, yeah, man. So much for Days Inn. I can stay anywhere. But that started the journey.
Okay, what were we talking about? Look, this story is personal. The story we saw.
Oh, you
We had personal experience.
Yes.
Is underlying this, and there's so you were immediately aware. You were intimately aware, you guys, of this situation, of what roles blacks were asked to play in film. All the stereotype imagery. Some of it goes back a long way. Where did you guys first take all that in? For example, you're a little younger than I am. Step and fetch it. I mean, we didn't have YouTube and that stuff. Where did you guys? How did that stuff sift its way? By the time you guys were looking around.
Well, for me, you know, when I was a kid, you know, all I did was watch television, and that my nickname was TV Guy. So I literally watched everything on television.
All those old movies.
All those old movies.
Over and over again in the afternoon.
So when you would see, you know, it wasn't until like when I was 14, I joined this theater group, the Experimental Black Actors Guild, XVAG, and I was around people of color that were writing, directing, producing. You know, and then I started to look, and then the 70s came, and then the black exploitation movies, but they were just my heroes. But then I looked at television differently. That's when I started to notice that I would look at Humphrey Bogart, here's looking at you, kid, sweetheart, out of all the gent joints, and I like Bogart. Then the black people would be, son, you want your luggage? And I was like, wait a minute, you're teaching him how to talk like that. Oh my God, and all the black people, I don't know nothing about putting no babies. And then it's like, frankly, sweetheart, get out, you know. So I was like, wait a minute, this is not making sense. So I was aware of images early on, but then I didn't know when I got into Hollywood that it would also affect me.
Yeah, I think a lot of it came from our frustration in that, you know, we were children of black exploitation, and not that black exploitation was great on any level, but the images were African Americans in lead roles.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what you went to the movie for, just to see black people, black women being beautiful and sexy, and black men being strong and opinionated and kicking ass. So that was sort of, you know, why you went to see those movies. And then when we came out, when we started auditioning, that era was over. And the the era that we came up in, everybody was either the punk that got slapped around by the cops, or you know the sniveling snitch, or the
Bad drug dealer.
yeah, the bad drug dealer.
The basketball player that couldn't read.
Harry and his,
Yeah. So you know we would go on these auditions and we would just laugh about it because it was like, damn man, you read this shit? You know, it's like. That's where the scene where the guy's going, man, I would never. That really happened to me and Robert. We went out for a Coke commercial, and there's this brother pacing back and forth, and he's just mad as hell. We just getting here, so we're like happy to have an audition. He's like, man, they always want you to do this bullshit. Got you selling out Keenen for some goddamn soap. And the lady called his name. She goes, Letty Washer, here.
But our heads are dressed up like that. And Liddy in here.
So a lot of this came, like I say, it came from our real experiences. But when we say the movie evolved, that wasn't. We didn't have a movie when we started. the idea was to get some stuff shot so Robert could show he could direct. So we did the movie backwards. So all those little sketch pieces,
The sketches came first.
they were shot first. And then we had a collection of sketches and was like, okay, we got a movie, we can do something. Then we sat down and came up with this story to go around the sketches.
That's what I was wondering, that because it could have gone either way. Now, I know you probably had some of those characters. You've probably been doing some of those characters
Yes.
since you were a kid and stuff like that. And so you had those and you built those sketches. And sketches, you know, they were real. They were really about stuff. But then you did such a great job, essentially, with the heart story, with the brother story. I mean, I love the way this thing starts with "you kill my brother," and then you know your little brother's listening to you. I mean, and from there through the post office at the end, you know, this story, this whole thing could have been built the other way. You
Well,
did such a great
that's
job.
what was good about the partnership between us, because I'm the edge, he's the heart. So,
He don't
It's gonna go the other way around. I was really. Is that the way it works?
No, because Keenen will come up, you know, like, we were talking about this a few weeks ago, talking about the writing style, like how we write. And it's like, I'm the legal pad, I will be there writing, and Keenen lays on the floor, he'll do push-ups, he's doing exercises, he'll lay down, but then he'll come up with brilliant stuff. And I was like going, dude, I always felt like you weren't paying attention. And he goes, no, that's just how I think. So we always had like a different way of creating. But I think, you know, but I'm gonna say this about Keenen. He has heart as well, so he'll come up with something and he'll say, well, why can't it be that? Why can't the grandmother, why have him in the bathroom, the little boy in the bathroom, and then let's switch him in and out of costume, you know, let's try.
That's a killer moment. That's a real killer moment. The whole movie comes together at that point, you know. And this seamless, really seamless integration of sketch and reality, which Janet Madison was kind of calling out. I mean, were there any movies, movie models that you guys were relating to? I mean, this thing is like, it's like Preston Sturges, it's like Woody Allen, it's like Walter Mitty. It's got so many, and yet it's completely itself. I mean, was there anything you were thinking about, or did this just evolve?
this movie is the quintessential sample of when you are too dumb to know you can't do something. We didn't even know how to write. We wrote Hollywood Shuffle. We were stand-up comedians. We got a video camera and put it up, and then we got pieces of clothing and laid it out. So each article of clothing represented a different character. And then we improvised.
We would just play.
We just play.
And come up with a different situation.
Right. So we knew we wanted to do a parody of Sneaking in the Movies. So we had these characters that we used to do. So we, like I said, put clothing down and put the hat on and start to improvise. And then we would watch it and write down what worked, what didn't work, and do it again.
You were taping yourself too?
Yeah, early. Well, that started in New York.
Yeah, Robert used to do that with just for fun, like have a crew come over and we would just improvise.
Because at a point, you know, my whole thing was, how do you get good at, you know, like a commercial technique? And one time I was doing a lot of TV commercials, and then I bought industrial equipment, and then I would say, Keenen, Reggivell, Johnson, Angela Scott, and Damon was working at Smiley's Deli, and he said, my brother, I got my young brother Damon, I think he's really funny, Rob, we should bring him over to the improv. And Damon comes in there and does 500 characters.
Yeah.
Brilliant. But that's where we started. It was always videotaping just to get better.
Right, so we, like I said, that's how we wrote all the sketches, was just on videotape. And so after we had the sketches, then we sit down to write. And by that point, we had, because the movie was done and then a year later.
I kept running out of money.
Yeah.
So it was like I had $60,000 to start off with, and then I went through it really fast, and then we had to take some time.
Well, wait a second. With the improv sketches, that obviously you were performing it too, right?
Right, yeah,
So that was a scratch tape for writing.
right.
Yeah.
But then at what point did you guys start making a movie where you were casting other people and stuff like that?
It's funny.
How long did this whole thing take?
It was 2.5. It was 2.5 years over 12 days. 12 days over 2.5 years, because we would shoot on the weekends. Because I'll tell you this moment. I remember the day I said to Keenen, I said, because I had done a Soldier Story, and after a Soldier Story, I told my agent I want to do more movies like this, where I get to be a human being. And my agent was like, they only do one black movie a year. You did it, be happy. And then I auditioned for The Color Purple for Harpo, and I didn't get the part, and so I missed my black movie. So then I said to Keenen, I said, we should really make our own movies and talk about the journey that we're on as actors. And then I just remember,
This is painful stuff. That's a painful experience.
well, the thing is,
But you never had any doubt that you were going to tell it through comedy.
no, because we're both funny. So we're like, Keenen would come talking about auditions that he was on, and then that's when Eddie was your roommate, and Eddie Velez, crazy as all get out. Every time we could come to the house to rehearse or work on something, Eddie's got another audition. So he has sand all over the floor. And so Keenen comes, he goes, I'm supposed to be on the beach for the scene, Keenen, I need sand. And the whole house had sand. And Keenen would go through like, what scene are you working on? He's a vampire, he got blood all over the house. I mean, so Eddie would be always, so we had Eddie, but part of the thing was us believing in ourselves, because now everybody can pick up a camera. Now you got all these people that are writer, directors, producers, actors, everybody's doing it. But back then, when we were doing this, it was like going against a billion voices that said this could never be done.
Absolutely. There's so much love in this film, in a way, you had every right to be writing out of a lot of anger. But the film comes off so joyous, and you kind of strike out at everybody. You get everybody. You're just as tough on the black characters as you are on the white characters, as you're on everybody.
Yeah,
And also just as loving, I would say.
I was gonna say love because we genuinely loved being in show business. Like, we loved it. We just were frustrated. So, in the movie, the love for it is not lost. It's just the frustration of where people were trying to guide.
I think if we hadn't have done it, we would have died as artists. I think that out of that pain, it's like any real artist, I think, takes their pain and uses that frustration to make, because Keenen was like, when we first started, Keenen was like, look, Rob, we two boys from the projects, we can do anything. If we can survive the projects, this is a piece of cake. And so when you talk about putting together this movie, a lot of you probably don't know what short ends are, And
Well, let me
Let's
just
explain short ends.
Yeah, let me just set this up in that mentality was like when you grow up poor, it doesn't mean that you go without. It means that you get creative to get the things that you want, right? So your friends gets a new bike, you make a go-kart out of some baby carriage wheels and a milk crate, you know what I'm saying? And that was how we approached the movie. It was problem, solution, right? As opposed to you just got a problem. So the first problem was film. Film costs a lot of money. So Robert found a solution. He went to, who'd you go to?
Norman Jewison. Norman Jewison gave me the short end
He did
Soldier Story.
Story.
I was in Soldier Story with Denzel, all of us is in the movie, and so I asked Norman, can you give me the leftover film? And Patrick Swarry, who was his producer, and Patrick Palmer, Ron Swarry and Patrick Palmer, they gave me the short end, so I called
So
Norman.
the short ends, somebody else can explain this better than I can. The short ends are what's left over at the end of the reel that you
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a reel of film back in the day when there was a reel of film was 10 minutes long.
Right.
And say you have a scene that's 8 minutes, you have 2 minutes left over. So then you only have 2 minutes
And you don't want to shoot on that and interrupt the next scene.
Exactly.
Cut that off, that's the short
So
end.
you
That hasn't been
that
explained.
gets discarded.
So you got 3 minutes of film, a minute of film, 3 seconds of. So we would use all those short ends. So if the character always say, "Winky dinky dog, Bobby, winky dinky dog," boom, we got it. Moving on. So it was all the little bitty shorts. And then I forgot how we got to this point. But when we first initially started editing the movie, the cheapest place that we could edit was a porno facility in Chadsworth. So we would go to the editing, and
It has that feel, you know?
it's like it's us and 15 porno editors, and I hear, put your leg down, put your leg down. You know, and so, and we're trying to do a serious movie. So there's always a way to make it work, but we just had to be really, you know, prepared.
While we're on that, what about the location? Sometimes I didn't think you even could use the doorway. You only had the wall or something.
We stole the locations.
What? Tell us about stealing the locations.
Well, here's the thing, you know, the world is asleep on Sunday. So, I didn't know how to do call sheets, but I would say meet at my house at 5:30. And then we're gonna go to this location. By the time the sun gets up, we've got 3 takes, because we only have so many short ends. And so we shot Jerry Curl, for example, at the Billiards, Hollywood Billiards, early Sunday morning. And we, you know,
They give you that location, or did you have to go?
we stole everything. I mean, my thing was that if the police couldn't see us, it was a good location.
And somebody would stand on the corner, and if they saw the cops, they'd whistle, throw the camera in the van, drive around the corner, and then when the cops are gone, we come back. But my favorite location was Winky Dinky Dog. So this is, like I said, so here's what Winky Dinky Dog is. Robin says, let's meet at this diner. So we meet at this diner, it's owned by this Korean guy. And we're like, okay. And was like, oh, this is nice, we shooting here? Robert goes, no. We shot in his parking lot. So Rob gave the guy like $30. He let us shoot in the parking lot. So we took the sign and put it on the back of the diner and used there where they took the trash out. That was where we set up tables.
There's 1 second where I could see Tiny inside the door.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was convinced that you weren't even allowed to use the door. You were
That was the kitchen
standing
back there.
outside.
Yeah, so we shot, that's where we shot Winky Dinky Dog. So it's the back of a diner.
That's creativity. That's creativity. All right. Hell, I don't know. So how did you had to have some money to do it. How did you get together the money? By the way, we have one of the producers here tonight, Rick Cummings.
Richard Cummings.
Rick
Cummings.
I don't know anybody other.
No.
No, I don't think other cast. No.
So how did you even finance that much?
Well, you know, I was doing TV commercials at the time. I had done Streets of Fire with Walter Hill. I had done American Flyers with Kevin Costner, and I had just saved. I was always, you know, because we're artists, so we always save our money. And at that time, I had like 60 in the bank. And then everybody was like, are you gonna get a Porsche, you gonna get a Jag, you gonna buy a car? And I was like, we should make a movie. And that's when Keenen was like going, Rob, you didn't go to film school, you don't, I said, but we could do this. And then
you actually had credit cards. It wasn't that easy to get credit cards on those.
Well, I never used my credit cards. I had credit cards, but I never really used them. And so I said, but the credit cards really came later because I ran through the 60s so fast. By the time we shot it, we were like at Photochem in Burbank looking at the dailies going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, it's making sense, it really works. And then we ran out of money. And then that's when I went on the road and started doing stand-up. And then when I came home, I had applications for credit cards. And that's when I said, I'm not gonna tell anybody, but I could figure this out with credit cards. And that's how I finished it. And then when Samuel Goldwyn bought the film, I was like, hey, can I get my check really quick? And he was like, what's going on? I got about, $40,000 on credit cards. He was like, you charge the movie? I said, yeah. I figured out how the wardrobe was Saks Fifth Avenue. I could put gas in my cruise tank. I figured it out. He says, we need to tell the whole world. I said, but people don't think it's a cheap movie. He says, no, how you've done it could be part of the legend of the film. And that's how it started.
Yeah, let's talk about, you paid the crew in gas, I heard. Is that true?
Well, no, what it was that I could use the credit cards to charge gas. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I would say, I can fill your tank up. But here's the kicker. None of the cast got paid, but when Samuel Goldwyn bought the movie, then on a Sunday afternoon, I had the accountant in my bedroom of my little apartment writing checks for everybody to make sure they got paid right away. So it was like, Sunday afternoon. But the thing that I would say is that, like what Keenen said, we were just being very resourceful. When it's your own money, I think I learned the most valuable lesson as a writer, director, producer, because when it's your own money, you're mindful of everything. And then there was a time you could rent the camera equipment on Friday, and if you said, oops, I didn't get it in by 8 o'clock, you had it the whole weekend. So I only paid for one day, and then I would shoot, Saturday and Sunday, and then I would do all my outdoor stuff Sunday morning, because everybody'd be asleep. So like the Black Acting School, that was Sunday morning at Nicholas Canyon.
Yeah. So the Black Acting School, heart and soul, center of the movie. I mean, that's the truth and pain of the whole of the story. You wanted to play Bogart, but what you saw was Step and Fetch It.
Right.
And that it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful piece. When did that come into it? Was that an early sketch, or did that come as you?
That was it was part stand up. It was part stand up, and then we built on it because then we started sharing notes on each other's auditions. Like he said, oh man, I went in for another snitch, or I went in for a gang member, I went in for this. And it kind of evolved, and then we got all the actors like, Grant Bush and Jimmy Woodard and Anne Marie Johnson and Big Mike, who played the acting team, so.
Yeah. Now, were these all friends? Did you know all these guys before this acting company you put together, or was this a straightforward casting process?
No, it was people. It's so funny because it was people that I had met at auditions that we stayed in touch, and then it's kind of like reaching across the aisle. It's like, hey man, we can still complain about these parts, or you can work with us and we're going to create something. And so everybody knew somebody, and we said, come on.
And this is, again, like networking. So I always tell young filmmakers, networking with me is not going to do you any good, because there's nothing that I can do everything for you, but there's nothing that you can do for me. So that's not networking. Networking is, who's this guy sitting next to me? So I'm an actor, he's a writer, she's a director, he's a cameraman. We all need each other. That becomes a network. That was a network on Hollywood Shuffle, was people who had same dreams that we did, in the same position we were in, who weren't concerned about money as much as they were concerned about opportunity. And so together we all created an opportunity for all of us.
You had Peter Deming shoot the movie.
Yes.
This was like either the first or second film he shot. He went on to do My Cousin Vinny. He went on to do the Austin Powers movies. By the time I was trying to get him, he was unavailable. And this was where he started, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it's like what Keenen said a second ago about networking. You don't know who's in this audience that's the next Steven Spielberg or Martin Scorsese or whomever. But one of the things to me is that you don't know who the writer is, who's Lucas, everybody has the potential. When we started out, we couldn't get investors to touch us because Spike had come out with his movie, and this one investor said, when you get to Spike, Mr. Keenen, Ivory, Wayans, they called me, and it was, we were both sitting there like, he's not the only, and it was a real cold lesson for us, because it's like, you don't know whose talent, who's going to blow up in this room. But if you were to network now and understand to work together, like right now, when I think about these students and everybody in this room, there is nothing to stop anybody from making content. The only thing that's going to stop anybody in this room is fear. A lot of them won't have the courage to say action or cut. They won't take the tools that they learned at school, because we broke every rule in the book. We didn't, hey, let's do it. We got to, like we're going to do we're going to do a party scene. We're going to dance scene. When I went to SAG to finally make amends and tell SAG I had done a movie, and I went to SAG and I was like, I've done this little film that Samuel Golan just bought, and I have some actors involved. And they said, well, Mr. Townsend, how many actors do you have involved? 83. there's a musical number, and there's a chase scene, and there's a zombie pimp, and then there's some slaves, and then the slaves become runaways, and then I become a detective, and then Jerry Curl saves them. And they looked at me like I was crazy, and then I said, I want to do the right thing. I know I broke the rules. And they said, you're willing to pay everybody? And I said, yes, this Sunday. I said, not even Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I said, soon. I told everybody, as soon as that money came in, we're good. And everything was good. You know what I mean? So my only thing is that, you know, when we talk about can everybody touch the brass ring, I flash back to us in Central Park being silly with no money, coming from, what was it, Pearl's place?
No, from the improv to Pearl's place.
Improv to Pearl's place to do stand-up for 5 minutes, you know, and that's when Keenen was doing, you know, that was the one joke that I always loved, is like, he goes, he says, I'm from a family of 10 kids. My father had stretch marks. You know, that was a good joke. That would always kill him.
So when did Goldwyn come in? How did you get, you know, how did that all come about?
You know what? Because back then, you know, once you're hungry for the information, you find like there's an indie world. And back then, you had Goldwyn, you had Island, you had all these.
Well, actually, there were a whole bunch of small
indie film companies that they were looking for stuff.
Yeah.
And I just remember you know,
Island Avenue. I mean, all of these little off labels.
and we thought it was really good. It made us laugh, and that was the whole key to everybody in the room. It's got to entertain you. It's not, they'll say it's for somebody else out there. It's got to entertain you. So Keenen and I loved the movie. We showed it to Samuel Goldwyn, and I just remember, because, you know, there was a thing in my brain, like, okay, he's an older white man. He might not get the comedy in the film. And Sam Goldwyn Jr., God bless him, he was a great man. Sam looked at the movie after the screening was over when he says, I don't know what a Jerry curl is, but that's gonna work. That's gonna work, you know. And he didn't mess with anything, and you know, it was like the most beautiful. It was like the most, you know.
Well, actually, and I agree. He what I liked about Sam was that he knew there were things that he didn't get. And he allowed us, because initially he was confused by Jerry Curl. He was just like, I don't know what that is. So we said, well, just let us screen it, you know, and if the audience likes it, then, you know, if they don't like it, we'll cut it out. And he said, okay. And the first screening was in Oakland, California. For those of you who don't know, that's the birthplace of the...
We got a standing ovation.
Yeah.